Hi, today I'd like to share more on thought forms. It's quite a central issue, and the relationship with becoming a black magician. And this is a tale of caution. So, human beings who decide I'm really unhappy in my life and I want to deal with my unhappiness. I want to find out what it is. So I now become a spiritual being in my head, and I begin to read, and then I begin to discover meditations, and gradually I begin to develop a personality that is focused on personal growth, development, psychic powers, being a great healer. Call it what you will. The, the process is pretty much the same in that we begin to spend time doing mental exercises, visualization and imagination exercises, developing our kinesthetic abilities, and the range of our personalities recedes into a more compact. We're not so scatty, we're not all over the place, we're more focused, more centered, but we're still in our bodies. When I say that, I mean we're still in our ego-centric bodies because we don't know it yet, but we're actually trying to go beyond our egos because all our pain and suffering is within the ego. And so we want to move beyond it, hopefully to get rid of it. I don't recommend that. But people have all manner of fanciful ideas as to what being truly spiritual means. And so we focus, concentrate, and we find ourselves becoming much more powerful because as we develop our ability to generate thought forms, we then find ourselves that we've also been working with our emotions. And so our capacity to experience strong emotions has increased. However, this is a caveat, when most human beings, they have access to X number of emotional range. It's like a guitar, you can play 3 strings and they sound wonderful, but there's 1 or 2 that doesn't quite sound quite right because we haven't been able to deal with those emotions. Like it could be anger. You're not able to process anger. You experience rage. You're not able to experience grief. So you become cut off. You go into sadness. There could be all different emotions. But there's core emotions that we are unable to express fully, and they affect our outlook on life. Anyway, so we're functioning with 3 strings. Ding, 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 ding. We're fine. So we think, because that's all we know. The other 2, they're out of the way. They're out of our awareness. So, sorry, there's 6 strings in the guitar, right? So you can play 4, but 2 are missing. 2 are out of tune. So you now develop your ability to experience those 4 emotions really strongly. The other 2, they're still locked into the unconscious. They're out of awareness. And there's all manner of trauma attached to those 2 strings, which are out of tune. Be that as it may, you are developing your skills. You get stronger and stronger. And now you come to a point when you find that you can affect other people because thought forms attached to a strong emotion can affect other people. And they're not aware of it. It just goes straight through. But it gets to a point when we can begin to attract into our world items, things. And I'll give you a few examples. I came up with a word for it. So for about 10 years, I'd been training in psychic martial arts. I thought that was a rather fun way of putting it. So I am a psychic martial art artist. As I'm training with becoming a healer, I go to groups to develop my abilities. And we have weekly meetings and we do all manner of connections and exercises and things. Anyway, so I'm gradually, unwittingly, becoming more and more powerful. And there was a number of events that happened in my life that highlight this. One was that I had been reading these books from someone in Glastonbury who were creating this, I think they were called it's a long time ago, they were called the Shambhala Center. And I woke up one day and I thought, I want to go to Glastonbury. So I got into my car, little red Mini that I had at the time, and off I went. It was a Sunday morning, summer, and it was quite warm. And as I was driving, got past Oxford, and I was driving, and I was in a bit of a reverie. And I remembered that the Shambhala Center was somewhere in the Glastonbury area. And as I was dreaming, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to go and meet these people? And kept driving, got to Glastonbury, and being Sunday, places were now shut, and I was looking for a B&B. There was one shop that was open, and I went in and I said, I'm looking for someone for a B&B. The place, the tourist board is closed. Do you have any idea? Oh, no problem. Looks under the counter, brings this big book, flips through the pages. And I said, but I am a vegetarian, if it's possible. And he said, try this place. Gave me the address, got into my red Mini, drove through town, came to these big bollards by the entrance, and to the right of it said, the Shambhala Center. And I drove straight in and I met the people. Another instance, because with all my training, we were actually working with Egyptian archetypes, the Egyptian gods. And so I thought, it'd be nice to have an Ankh. And I just saw myself with a big Ankh to wear around my ring, around my neck. And a few days later, a friend of mine said, someone gave me this Ankh and I thought of you. Would you like it? It was a lovely Ankh. silver, big. So, thank you very much. So I got my Ankh. Sometime later, this is the time when Filofax were the rage. And, being indoctrinated like everybody else and go with the crowd. Oh, I'd like a Filofax. I wouldn't know what to do with it, but I'd like a Filofax. And yeah, I really want a Filofax. And sure enough, within a week, my mother says, I went to visit my mother in London, and she says, the people where I work, she was a housekeeper, the owner of the place, whatever you call her. She gave me this as a present. And I looked at it and I was salivating because it was a leather-bound Halifax from Harrods. It was the most expensive Filofax diary that you could lay your hands on. I mean, it really was quite magnificent. I still have it. My wife uses it these days. And my mum looked at me and she says, would you like it? I said, yes, please. And so I got my Filofax. Another instance, I just moved, following the people who taught these healing methods that I was involved in at the time. I decided to move into the same town that they were. And I said to myself, well, if I'm meant to be here, a place will come up. And sure enough, it did. And I had this lovely Victorian ground floor flat with huge ceilings. It was magnificent. Anyway, I moved in there, and there's a huge fireplace in that area. And I thought, oh, it'd be nice to have a fireplace. And I began to look at it, and I came across one which was, they called it a dragon fireplace because it had like little windows on it. And I really liked it. I thought, I'd like to have this fire. So, sure enough, 2 days later, not quite yet, but 2 days later, a guy comes in to deal with the central heating, with the servicing of the boiler. And I said, do you happen to know of anyone who might be getting rid of a fireplace? What a weird thing to ask a central heating engineer, but there you go. And I said, I do. Yes, I've just set up a system for someone and they got rid of their fireplace. They've got it in. So, I'd be interested. Guess what I got? It was the exact model I had in my mind. So those are there's lots of other things, but those are the most. And as we develop our abilities, the world will provide for us what we unintentionally imagine strongly with power. And, those are insignificant things. However, when we come to the black magician, and this is the cruncher, as we develop our abilities, we still have not necessarily dealt with all the trauma that is, those two strings which are out of tune. They're still in the unconscious, and they still dictate our ego. I was in my 20s. I was still very, very damaged. So I was developing all this power, but I was very damaged. But I was surrounded by people who were steering me, if you like. In fact, my heart was always in the right place. It's just not available to me at the time. But I was going in the right direction. And shortly after I finished that episode, I decided that I wanted to train as a psychotherapist, which is the next stage of my life, which helped me deal with my traumas to a great extent. I didn't deal with all of it at the time, that came much later, but it certainly got me on the right road to keep moving in the right direction. Because when we develop power, if we're lost in our egos because we are still traumatized, we are still at the mercy of the Archons, the dark forces, the dark spirits, which from the fourth dimension still affect us. They are the ones that come into the night in the evenings, they insinuate, they say all manner of words in our heads, and we quickly lose the plot because they feed on our fears. And so this is the danger point for the aspiring healer, spiritual seeker, call it what you will. There comes that moment when we're still lost in our egos, but we are developing strong powers. And we're not necessarily fully aware. Like in my case, I took it for granted that I would have these wishes and it would come my way. I mean, I only ever wished for things to make my life easier. But nevertheless, it's a slippery rope towards beginning to influence other people in a not so nice way. It's a really bad slippery road. So there does come a moment where the choice is to surrender to a higher force or to descend into black magic. And this is something that will apply to every person who really begins to seriously focus and hone their abilities. Yeah, which is why I place such a strong emphasis on dealing with our emotional traumas. If we can, and behind that is self-love, coming to a place of loving ourselves. Because without self-love, and I don't mean self-love in that egocentric way, I mean self-love from the place where we forgive ourselves. Because we are human and we're vulnerable and we've grown up damaged. And so we need to be able to take stock of who we are and with kind eyes accept. We don't condone, okay? We do not condone the behavior that we have done in our arrogance, in our stupidity, in our ignorance. We don't condone any of that. But when we know better, we can look back and with a kind heart forgive ourselves. We're not going to be like that again, but we have to forgive ourselves. If we don't, then if we're unable to forgive ourselves, the darkness which is in our unconscious, the shadow, as Jung would say, it projects into the environment, and it's a bad ending. It's not a good road to go through. Apart from we become unhappy, we become really, really, well, we're already unhappy. That's why we're searching, right? We're already unhappy. But we become corrupted. So a tale of warning. Thank you for listening, and thank you for liking my videos, and look forward to sharing much more with you again. Bye-bye.